Everybody. Welcome in. How are you guys? I want to apologize, first of all, for being late. As you know, he's in El Paso, and he was late going to lunch. So, as per our men's emotion conversation, I didn't want to make him feel emotionally distraught. So, I took a few minutes to talk to him, which was good because he wasn't having a good day. And I seem to be having some technical issues. So, please bear with me. If I look like a bad Chinese movie, I'm really sorry. Ben laughs at me a lot. So, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this fine
Good.
day?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Trying to, we just get so picky about ourselves, don't we? I just, golly.
Yes, we're our own worst critics. Yes, this is known.
Right, right. Yes, it's it is not fun. So our topic today, I think, is a really good one because it was an issue before we went into the lockdown, and it's been an issue coming out of the lockdown, but also I think it's a big issue between addiction and compulsive behaviors.
Mm.
And we were talking about isolation versus alone. And the cool thing was, as I was doing research, I heard it called loneliness versus solitude, as opposed to isolation versus alone. And I kind of liked that. There is a lot of this that ties back to the connection, that thing about connection video that we did. So some of the things that I thought was really interesting, I was listening to like a Buddhist take on things because, I'm all things spiritual. And they were talking about how solitude is about not being in the presence of others, but in your own company. And that doesn't mean loneliness. That could be a time for reflection, growth, meditation. And loneliness, this was really interesting. Loneliness was described as not a lack of people. Let me know what you think about this, but a lack of not being seen, heard, understood, or known. And I thought, wow, that was really powerful. So what do you think about that, Ben? Do you agree with that
That
statement?
I completely agree. That was one of the things that I found. Uh, you can be lonely in a crowd, and the
Yeah.
my exposure to it has been uh, that if you're putting up a mask, we all use
Hmm.
masks to some extent. We have to,
Hmm.
but if you put up a mask as to what you're projecting or how artificial you are, you're not making
Right.
connection with people. You can be in a room, and I found people on the YouTube complaining about this experience. They had two different
Hmm.
daughters, and they were saying, I'm in a crowd at a party, but yet I feel so lonely.
Yeah.
And it's because, yeah, you're putting up
Wow.
that mask. So any connection you have is to that. Your body
Hmm.
knows this isn't, your brain knows this isn't, they aren't connecting to you. They're connecting to this persona you created.
Right. Well, and you know what else I think is interesting? The loneliest I ever was when I was married to my ex-husband.
Hmm. Hmm.
The loneliest I ever was. And I had a husband. Um, None of the loneliness had to do with the kids, right? Like they were little and none of it was that. But I felt extremely lonely in that relationship because I was not feeling seen, heard, um, understood, or known.
Hmm.
And that can really lead to some isolation. And when we isolate, that can lead to our compulsive behaviors coming out and to our addictions kind of taking over, um, which is interesting to me. Here's a statistic. 46% of Americans are lonely, and 43% of Americans feel isolated. So that's a huge part of the population. So if you're out there and you're feeling alone or you're feeling isolated, you're really not. There's a lot of people that are feeling this way. And um, the other thing too is that I thought was interesting. Loneliness, you are waiting for someone to come into your life and make you happy, and your happiness depends on others. Whereas solitude, you find happiness within yourself, and then you don't depend on others for your happiness. So I wonder what you think about that. Do you agree with that statement that if you're lonely, you're waiting for someone to come into your life to make you happy? Or do you think that um, like that could be a sign of depression? Or I mean, how true do you think that statement is?
I think that's a very good statement. You can be
Mm-hmm.
lonely. There's so much on that. You can be when you're, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well, exactly, the very term itself, I am lonely, that means you are feeling negative connotations to this. You are lonely means you want somebody to have contact with, to relieve
Mm-hmm.
that, versus, like self, I'll use the term isolation, uh just to make it a little easier on my wee brain, versus isolation. The definition I found of isolation was actually pretty slanted, but it indicated the unhealthy separation
Oh.
of social interaction. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in an alone time, you're working on yourself. You're, like you were saying, meditating,
Yeah.
spending time in nature, recharging. That is especially important for introverts, because introverts get their power from being alone versus extroverts. The best explanation I still have ever found has been: you go to a party, do you feel invigorated when you leave? Do you have a
Mm-hmm.
hard time going to sleep? Or when you leave a party, do you feel, I just got to get alone? That's a pretty good indicator as whether or not you're extroverted or introverted. Being extroverted does not mean you're naturally at home in front of a crowd. It's just that's where you get your energy from. There have been performers who performed who were introverts. Bob Dylan comes to
Yeah.
mind. Taylor Swift, the lead singer for Talking Heads, very introverted. So.
Isn't that interesting? And guys, I want to apologize because it is my connection today that is crackly and bad and slow. So please just bear with me as we do this. And I think, isn't that interesting, though, that some of the biggest rock stars really were introverted and shy, and and yet here they are performing in stadiums, and they are just not what you would think, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Tina Marie had a really good comment. She said, "It's easy to feel lonely when you don't love yourself."
Hmm.
And I agree with that statement,
Yeah.
because when I was in the loneliest situation I was ever in, I did not love myself. I was in full blown anorexia. I don't know whoever just said Kurt Cobain, but you are my soul person right there. Um, but I wasn't loving myself. I had a really bad misdiagnosis, and I was very isolated. Even though I had a full-time job at a bank where I had people around me and everything like that, there was a lot to that. And what's interesting about isolation is that it actually changes your brain. And I thought that was really interesting. It literally changes the neural pathways in your brain. And what I'm learning is there are a lot of things that do that. And I
Hmm.
didn't realize that our brain was like so programmable. Like I knew it was that you could program it, but I
Hmm.
didn't realize that so many things could change it for the good or the bad.
Yeah.
So brain fog, being mentally tired, trouble finding words. Those could all be uh, um, trouble finding words, um, of isolation, and social isolation really affects these. So remembering and recognizing someone as familiar could be affected. Reading someone's emotional expressions could be affected. Empathy and understanding that people have their own desires is also something that can change when you are isolated. So you lose those skills. We learn them as young children, but when we isolate and we don't practice them, and we lose the ability to do that. And isn't that interesting, Ben, that our brain can do all of that just by not connecting with
Oh yeah,
people?
yeah. And I found pretty much the same thing, that personality issues can become
Mm-hmm.
exasperated. Words is hard. Um, and it can become exasperated by uh, being self-isolated, and
Yeah,
probably has to do with the fact that you have nobody to bounce behaviors off of. We need each other. Even
right.
if you're an
Yeah,
extrovert, we still need each other, or introvert.
yeah,
um we're a herd animal. um
exactly.
we don't do good when we're self-isolating, and I've learned that the hard way.
Hmm. What was one time? I wonder if you would share where you were self isolating, and what did it cause you to go through, and then how did you work your way out of that? Did you go to therapy? Did you just start trying harder to connect? Like, what did that look like for you?
It was one of the things that I did after I became aware of, I, growing up. I was always aware of inheriting feelings. We would call that an
Mhm.
empathetic response. And when
Right.
you get those from walking next to people or walking in a room, it's like, oh my gosh, um, I feel angry. I feel sad over here. I feel, anxiety over here. I'm feeling intense energy behind me. Um,
Hmm.
it gets to be a little bit much, and
Hmm.
I never gave it any conscious thought. That is what drove me to become a more object oriented person, even though my personality indicates I am very person oriented. So the effects of that, and that was right up until, gosh, I want to say 2007, that I
Hmm.
began to see this, and I began to see that, hey, this is causing issues for me. I
Right.
don't know, and everybody has personality flaws, regardless. If we hang around people, some of us are going to laugh at our own jokes too much. Some of us will say the wrong thing. That happens. We need to be
Right.
forgiving of ourselves.
Right. Right.
But I found when I self isolated so much, especially in middle school, high school, I became a little more of a herd animal. But then after college, into my job here, yeah, I started self isolating bad, and I found it was difficult to carry on conversations. It's difficult to read
Yeah.
people. It became difficult to just be around people in a healthy way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then paranoia, and well, maybe not paranoia, but you begin to, question things that, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. It doesn't
Right.
always have ulterior motives. So.
Right, right. So, how did you work on getting yourself out of those situations? Like, did
Hmm.
you just start talking to people more? I mean, because I talk to everybody. I'm the one that they're like, oh, God, not her. Please shut up.
Well,
But,
yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, 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 no.
But I found I put myself in therapy, and it was
Hmm.
nothing that was consciously. outwardly said to me. It was something at which my therapists, they reinforced in me without actually ever telling me. They would have programs where you're involved with other people. It's like, oh yes, I feel so much better when I'm with this group of people. And they say, why is
Yeah,
that? And I don't know. I feel better when I'm with people. And they would keep hammering on it, planting that little seed until it's like, I get it. I
yeah,
do better when I'm with people. You know, and,
right.
we all do need our alone time. Even
Mm-hmm.
extroverts need alone time. We need a
Mm-hmm.
time to.
Yeah,
That's when you focus. That's when you journal. That's when, yeah, you meditate, hypnosis. Just think about, work on yourself, spend time in nature, exercise. You can do group exercise, but most of us tend to do it alone.
right, right. And go do some goat yoga. That would be cute and fun. I would love to do goat yoga. And speaking to what you were saying, I heard something now. A podcast or a YouTube channel that I really like is Mayim Bialik's Breakdown because she really speaks to my brain.
Mhm.
She is actually a neuroscientist. She's got a PhD, so she breaks down a lot of things, and I love it. I love it when she gets real technical. I'm like, oh yes, I think it's great. But one of the things that she said about connection and isolation versus, instead of saying alone, let's call it solitude, was thinking about a time when connecting went well for you and having having that positive memory. And so you could be like, oh, instead of remembering all the times that it went wrong, when you walked into the Walmart and you took on everybody's energy and it was just awful and you had to leave, remember the time that you and a friend took a walk through nature and it was fun. And it's kind of what your therapist was doing with you. It's like creating and revisiting these positive memories so that it gives a positive spin to you.
Mhm.
And then you're more, it like reinforces your behavior in a positive way. Did I explain
Mhm.
that right? Does that
Yeah, exactly.
make sense?
Yes.
Yes. And I thought, wow, that's really great because we do that a lot, with kids, animals, whatever. Hey, you did it right. Yay, look at
Mm.
you. Um, and so that is something too, if you're struggling with isolation and it's really hard for you to reach out, maybe therapy isn't an option for you. Try thinking on or journaling on these things of times when connecting went good. It doesn't matter if you were a little girl or a little boy, if it was just a few weeks ago. Like, think on the things that went right, and it will
Mm.
start to rebuild those connections in a positive way. And I thought that was really interesting because I had never thought of
Mm.
thinking about the positive side of it, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
so, and that's easy to do. Well, for me, it would be easy to do. You might have to think a little harder, maybe on some of that, but then you might find the confidence to step out. Some of the things that was a solution to this, and I thought these were interesting because I don't like to just bring facts. I like to bring solutions, right? So we can
Mm.
talk about it all day long, but what can we do about it, right? Instead of just sit here and moan on and on about it, like I tend to do when you guys, I tell you, you should see me before. I'm like, oh god, is this okay? Is the lighting okay? So I am definitely one of those people that would sit in it and be like, it's not right, it's not okay, I'm not doing it right. But some of the things that you could do is education. So learning about different things. You don't have to get out and go to the library. You don't have to go to Harvard. You don't have to go to Oxford. You can get on the internet and pick a topic that you want to learn on and Google it and just start studying and researching, getting your mind thinking about things like that. Social interactions. going out, doing things in real life, if you're able, or just getting on even groups like this, needing a meeting, the lifeboat, where you interact with people on a higher level.
Mhm.
Um, Thinking, just anything that makes you think, crossword puzzles, brain games, anything like that. Um, Exercise was another one that was
Mhm.
really good. And staying curious. And I love that because when we're curious, right, we're always seeing the new exciting things and we want to explore it, and then we're a little less apprehensive maybe to head outside, to go on that walking trail or whatever. What do you think about that? Do you think that those are things that would work for you
Oh
in
yes.
situations?
Oh yes, yes. I find, especially the exercise, the time in nature,
Yeah.
that was those two, along with several other things, have also been attributed to neuroplasticity. That's the ability for our brain to adapt, to rewire things. Our brain becomes like, when you're skiing and
Hmm.
somebody's gone in front of you, they placed places where their skis have gone into the snow, and sometimes our skis can fall into that. That our brains get the same way. Neuroplasticity helps us to break those patterns, and so much of our lives are patterns.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the quotes that I heard that I thought was really good. Greg Hartley on the behavior panel, he used the term, the
Hmm.
organism does what made the organism successful. What that
Hmm.
means is, as children, we learn how to lie, how to do
Hmm.
things to where we get out of situations. Well, with
Right.
self isolation, we've learned, hey, this works for us, this kept us safe. So sometimes we have to learn to basically uh, break or throw away what's working to try something
Mm,
new. But
right.
yeah, I find that those work for that. Those also work for grounding, which is a uh, em- people with empathic tendencies will probably know what that is, where you're getting rid of all those other emotions that aren't yours. You
Hmm.
just kind of shed them off, like, okay,
Right.
I can face people again. Um,
Right.
but yeah, and the thing is that, speaking of isolation and versus alone time, even the guy, was it Jim Carrey? Yeah, couldn't
Hmm.
remember his name. He made an interesting quote. He's a huge, huge extrovert, and one of the things that he said was, the quote was, "Solitude is dangerous. It is very addictive. It becomes a habit after you realize how peaceful and calm it is. It is like you don't want to deal with people anymore because they drain your energy." And that is what
Hmm.
alone time allows you to refresh, versus self-isolation out of fear or whatever
Right.
else drains your energy. It creates all these problems. It uh it, it creates anxiety. So yeah,
Hmm.
that is also a good distinction. If you're finding your lifestyle is becoming very, it's creating all this depression and
Hmm.
anxiety in you, that you know getting out and just socializing with people. You don't have to become everybody's best friend. You just need
Right.
that socialization.
Right. Now, do you find, I wonder, do some of your compulsive behaviors or addictions, whatever you suffer with, do those come out because you isolated, you start doing those, or do you isolate because you're doing those? Did I ask that in the right way?
it's
What's true for you?
it's for me, it's a self-feeding loop. Resistance causes heat causes resistance, downward
Mhm.
spiral. uh,
Mhm.
it was the same way. My dysfunctions, my
Mhm.
codependency, my wanting to look up to everybody as an authority figure and wanting their approval so much, led to my saying, this is not working for me. I'm going to self isolate, which in turn, because I self isolated, and I never consciously said that, but that
Right, right.
is, I'm paraphrasing heavily, but that led to more codependent relationships,
Hmm.
behaviors, self-destructive
Hmm.
tendencies when I got around people. And it makes sense because you're training
Hmm.
yourself, essentially. You're programming.
Right. Right, right, right. And it's easy when so for me, the isolation causes the behavior. So, I am alone and nobody's paying attention. So I can skip a meal. I can do this. I can quit
Mm,
eating. And it's not that I isolate because I stop eating. It's that I'm alone. No one's going to know if I skip lunch,
mm,
and the next thing you know, you're in this huge thing. So for me, it's kind of the other way. And I think it's interesting how that can even happen. So something that for me could start off as a really positive thing, if keeping an eye on it could really go side control. It's that addictive compulsive behavior, but it's also the hiding.
mm,
It's easier to hide. So instead of me being out in public and everything, and all of a sudden I'm not, when
yeah.
I'm, home alone, nobody notices if I'm outside or not outside. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh boy, I got a problem.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I
And
wanted
that,
to surf. Oh, go
go
on.
ahead. Oh, I was
No,
just going
no,
to
no,
say,
go
I
on.
was just going to say, add that this, I think I probably already said it. That feeds into what I had found on my own, and was I
Yeah.
found on various sources, was that if you have personality flaws, they will become amplified when you self isolate.
Yeah.
Not spending alone time. Alone time again
Hmm.
is quite different. Alone time is, you can
Right.
think of alone time as working on myself time. I'm
Yeah.
rejuvenating. I'm meditating. I'm taking time, and we all need that. Even the
Hmm.
biggest extrovert in the world, you
Right.
can't always be around people, and
Hmm.
it's not good to think that you can. We
Right.
we don't talk to people when we're sleeping, so uh, you need that. So yeah.
Right, right. I wanted to circle back to grounding, and I wanted to ask you what you do to ground yourself. And for those of you who are like, what is grounding? It is an act of kind of centering yourself and letting all of that negative, unhealthy energy that you've picked up, or even just from a situation, we all have those times when we can pick up on it. It's about getting yourself back to center, and so I to ground yourself.
Couple different things. Meditation works really well. There's certain
Hmm.
meditations where you just, and what you're doing is you're consciously saying, okay, through visualization, several different ways. You're
Hmm.
saying, okay, I'm
Hmm.
getting rid of this. All this energy is going into the ground. It sounds very woo woo, but I assure you it's not. What another thing, which is really odd, I found that walking in grass barefoot, it really does help. There's something about our connection with the earth. And again, I'm not meaning to
Hmm.
sound woo woo or anything, but we
Hmm.
know that this works. Like a gratitude journal. A gratitude journal. That concept sounds so stupid. Oh, come on! How's listening? It works because you're seeing, this is what I'm grateful for. Well,
Right.
grounding, you're physically taking an act to say this isn't mine, and you're getting back, back into nature, or just centering yourself mentally, and you're saying
Hmm.
this doesn't belong to me. You're visualizing it, you're putting it away, and you're just kind of, if nothing else, it's kind of a moment to
Right.
you know we get
Right.
we get so throughout the day. Oh my gosh! Oh my! Oh, I have to do. I have this appointment. I have that appointment. I have this. I have that. Oh my gosh! I have to meet with this.
Right.
our brains can spin out of control, and sometimes we just need that moment to just
Yeah.
like, okay, and hear our voice, hear our singular voice in our head instead of the 50 ADHD voices we have going on at the same time.
Right, right. And walking on earth barefoot is actually called earthing. And
Mhm.
it is amazing. And interestingly enough, when we started wearing shoes that were made from synthetic material, so like running shoes, those kind of things, plastic styrofoam flip, it actually prevented us from connecting with the earth, like if you wear like a leather sandal or something like that. So if you're ever in the park and you're feeling really stressed out, or you're having a bad day at work and you've got a grassy place, try it once, go out, take your shoes off, and just stand barefoot in the grass and just kind of do a little bit of box breathing if you have a chance to do that. And I don't typically do this, but I think at the end of the video, let's do a little box breathing and a guided meditation, because we haven't done that in a while. So if that's a little too woo-woo for you when we're done, I'll let you know. You can hop off. If you want to stick around and see what that's about, we can do a little grounding to get into our solitude. But those things are really amazing. And like I said, I do a lot of breathing. You'll see me a lot of times, I'm just like,
Mhm.
and I really let my shoulders drop, because that's so relaxing for me. And strangely enough, it's something that I learned in therapy when I was in DBT. And
Mhm.
just the breathing, because you really like, or even slowing down, like if you can consciously slow down the way that you're talking and lower your volume, that will, it works in arguments, if people are arguing, but also just yourself relaxing your shoulders. Like when we're all tense, we like tend to hunch. Did I freeze? We tend to kind of hunch up a little bit. So those are all some really good ways to ground yourself without, like when you're in your seat at work, or driving down the road, and maybe the dogs or the kids or the traffic around you, maybe people are honking at you, and you just, just let your shoulders drop. And so that's a really good way to kind of get out of some of that. Let's talk about solitude. So we've talked about isolation and how that looks and how that might not be the most healthy for us. Um, let's talk about solitude and the opportunity to sit with yourself. That can sound so scary, because you don't know what's going to come up when you're doing that. Have you found then that solitude has helped you with your codependency and things like that, to just think it through and kind of sort through it, or have you found that that kind of turns into isolation?
For me, solitude, alone time, whatever term you want to use for it. What you said is exactly what I found, is that not self-isolating, but saying I'm taking time out
Mm-hmm.
for me,
Mm-hmm.
that has helped, just even sorry, not having to meditate, although meditation is certainly a good part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply thinking things through without external distractions. It is amazing the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that your brain has been trying to tell you, but you haven't listened. A
Yeah.
good example of isolation versus uh, alone time or solitude would be self-isolation. You'll tend to experience a lot more of what Tommy calls automatic negative thoughts.
Right.
Solitude, you're kind of working through that. Where does this come from? What events in my life have led me to where I'm at, and what is the result of that? Are there any troubling things that my
Mm-hmm.
body's trying to tell me? Is what am I worried about? What uh, what challenges am I facing? It is interesting sometimes if you're not ready for it and you are, I keep using the wrong term, alone time or
No, you're good.
solitude. If you are going there, sometimes you will get disturbing thoughts, but
Mhm.
there are thoughts that are going in our brains anyway. So they need to be
Exactly.
uncovered and like, okay, how do I deal with this? What do I need to do with this? Do I need to let it go? Sometimes that's the case.
Right.
Do I need to take some action? You know,
Mhm.
but it allows us that reflection time just to, because otherwise we're running around, we're filling our heads with you name it, television,
Right.
radio, even if you don't engage in those things, driving along, oh, what's that person doing, what's this person doing, we're
Yeah.
distracting ourselves from probably our most important relationship, and that'd be our relationship with ourselves. How can
Right.
we love others if we don't take the time to, love ourselves? And
Right.
it's part of self-care, which will help us deal with others.
Mhm.
One of the things that's come up with me recently, for whatever reason, this past week has been, we've gone through some
Yeah.
external influences upon it, be it solar storms or alignments of celestial bodies and whatnot.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
has been depression. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what do I do with this? Where is this coming from? Is there
Right.
anything I am doing that's causing this? Is there any worries I have that could be
Mhm.
feeding it? Let's explore
Mhm.
that. And
Mhm.
that's when you find out, like, no, this is, at least in my case, no, this is something, other people are going through some things, which if you're the slightest bit, if you have any slight empathic predispositions, you will pick up on that. And they don't even have to say it. Your brain will pick up, this person's depressed. Oh, I feel depressed. What is causing this? If you don't take that time and say, okay, where's this coming from? You'll just carry it
Mhm.
with you. And, how, as Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? You know,
Right. Right. That was very wise. I want to say, I want to add to that. If you are sitting in solitude with yourself and something comes up and maybe you're not ready to face it yet, still grab your journal, write it down. It doesn't mean you have to deal with it at that moment. That can be a topic that you visit with your therapist, your doctor, your friend, whatever down the road to again get that connection, get that, idea of how to approach it. So just because it comes up, you might not be ready to have that conversation yet. But this is where journaling is so important because you just write it down and then you can revisit it when you are ready. Um, and I wanted to say too, you touched on empaths and others' emotions. You don't even have to be in the same room. My husband could be feeling something in El Paso and I can feel it. And it's because there's an energy connection there. And what's really important, why solitude is important, is so that you understand your baseline. So that way, when other people's energies come in and you pick them up, which we've all done, and especially if you're coming out of a really traumatic situation where you had to read the energy of the room, how's this other person feeling, looking at me, that kind of thing. Um,
mhm.
you, um, um, I just lost my train of thought because there was a message that popped up on my screen. Um, when you're sitting in solitude with yourself, you learn your own baseline, and that's how you can differentiate between what's actually yours and what's actually someone else's. Because until you learn that about yourself, you're never going to know. It's going to be like this muddled mess. Whereas, it's going to be like, yeah, I don't know, tomato soup. And but if you learn your baseline, then it's like vegetable soup, and you can be like, those green beans are not mine.
Yes.
So, like that's where the solitude, so I don't be afraid of what might come up for you. If it's not something that you're ready to deal with, again, just write it down. And really, you know, if you're in therapy, take it to your therapist and be like, this came up for me. I don't know what it means. Or this came up for me. I know exactly what it means, but I'm not ready to deal with it yet. You can always revisit it.
Mhm.
And I want to share that with you. You don't have to deal with it in the moment. So don't let that fear stop you from solitude. But like you said, once you know your own energy, your own baseline, if you don't like the term energy, once you know your own baseline, you'll be able to understand what stressors other people might have put on you. Um, Ben, was it hard when you started taking time for yourself? Was that a hard thing for you to
Oh,
do, to say to somebody like, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do this
oh,
today"?
oh, yes, yeah, incredibly, because there's a social stigma
Right.
where you'll face, or you can, depending upon who you run with.
Mm-hmm.
It it sounds very, how do I say it, be an overreaction. It sounds very, I need my safe space. I need my stuffed emoji poo, my therapy poo. It sounds kind of like that, but so there can be some negative social pressure,
Mm-hmm.
but this is stuff, it's a boundary that you're establishing for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you can establish that, I mean, you don't have to say, "Oh, I'm not dealing with anybody today. I'm doing this." You say, "No, I have something else planned. I have one of my
Right.
what was the term? Big rocks." Well, this idea that you schedule big things in your
Uh-huh.
day. Look at, I got
Uh-huh.
this much time for this. I have this much time for this. I have this much time for this, and you try to pile it all up. It's like, I don't have enough
Right.
time. You'd schedule these big rocks, these things that are most important to you, and life will flow around it, kind of like water in a container. And if you
Oh.
just schedule the time, and you don't have to say people, you don't have to tell people necessarily. You don't have to tell your narcissistic mother that, "Oh, I'm taking time to meditate." That's
Right.
whoa, whoa. You don't have to do that.
Right. Right.
I'm just not going to be available then, and just let them
Right.
do that. And once you do, yeah, you can get some disturbing thoughts, but you know what? If you don't,
Mm.
those disturbing thoughts are going to come out eventually anyway.
Right.
Can you take the time to deal with it when you're alone? Or
Mm-hmm.
is it going to be in the middle of that meeting you have scheduled where you're trying to remember all this person who's droning on and on? You're trying to pay attention, and all of a sudden you have this thought come into your head like, you are facing this. When's the more opportune time to deal with that? And like
Right.
Christy said, you don't have to solve it right now. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
problems we face are going to be long term, but it's just a time to, okay, I have this coming up for me. How am I going to solve this? I don't know. Bring it up to a therapist, bring it up to a friend. That's part of why we have social interaction and connection with people.
Right.
You'd be surprised at the wisdom you get out from people that don't necessarily have any psychological training, but they just are divorced from our passionate view we can't see because we accept all this as true, even if it's not. Like, it's true in our brains. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
since this is true, how do I deal with this? That's the way when a feeling comes up, our brains are taught to look for, not to evaluate whether or not if it's ours or anything else. Our brains are trained to, it's one of its jobs is to look for ways to validate that. It'll go around as you
Yeah.
step on a tack. It's like, okay, I'm feeling sore. Well, your brain will say, well, look down at the bottom of your feet. I feel like I'm being watched. Well, look for cameras. Look, and that's the part that's extreme. But
Right. Right.
that's the way our brains are made. So, um, yeah, it's just yeah, just take time, find these problems that are coming up. They will
Yeah.
come out eventually anyway. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
seek advice of a therapist, of a friend, of you don't necessarily want to necessarily take everything to a therapist. I have no problem doing that, but maybe you're trying to
Mhm.
find a therapist. Maybe you're trying to feel out, do I trust this person 100%? So okay,
Yeah.
if it's nothing super personal that's going to destroy you, then maybe you can't take it to a friend. Hey, I'm worried about, I didn't realize it, but I'm having some trepidation about this vacation that's coming up next year. Does this sound logical to you? Just get some
Yeah.
feedback.
Right. Well, and that's where peer support groups come in super handy, like the lifeboat and needing a meeting, and those connections there, especially needing a meeting because you can get on the chat and actually chat with the people on screen and in the room. And so, if you're not sure about therapy or what to do, or like you said, maybe it's a vacation that you're concerned about, and you're like, well, I don't really know that I need to talk about this in therapy, but it's still something, you know. Peer support is very important. Tara Smiling is a really great channel for that as well. Um, and I love, Ben, what you said about big rocks. I have never heard that before. And I love that. So scheduling the big things and everything kind of fills in around it. I love that. And, one thing that I learned when I started kind of working on those, some people call it shadow work. Some people just call it doing work, working on those parts of you that you don't really like. We all
Yeah.
have them. Um, the first thing that you have to do, and the first thing I was taught, was don't start doing any of that really hard, difficult, like in your face healing until you can love yourself,
Hmm.
because if you can't love yourself first, you're going to spin yourself into this really awful thing. So, if you're able to just sit in solitude and learn to love yourself, then these other things that are talked about on all of these other amazing Ripple channels, they're gonna, not that any of it's ever easy, because none of it is easy. Some of it is not as difficult or messy as other things,
Hmm.
but you will, then it'll be easier for you to connect and share because you're giving yourself that love and that grace. And I want to say that to you too. Like, if you guys really are in a place where you're struggling to love yourself, work on that first, and then work on this other stuff that comes up. And that's where writing it down for future would be great, because if you're just learning to love yourself and this stuff is coming up and you're like, I don't feel worthy and I don't love myself because this, that, or the other thing, you write it down. And then when it's time to really face it, you can go back and be like, okay, I remember when this came up. I didn't love myself because I felt abandoned by my mom. And then you can go back and look at that issue, right? Or maybe you save that one for a little while and you're just like, I don't love myself because I'm short and I have brown hair and brown eyes, and that's really basic and awful. And but then you learn that you're an angry little hobbit and everybody loves you for it, and it's not so bad. Now, again, that's a very lighthearted way. But I want to encourage you guys, do love yourself. Work on that first. And that's a great, solitude is a great time to do that, as long as you don't spiral out. I wonder, Ben, do you schedule a certain amount of time for your solitude? Guys, I'm sorry, this chair. Do you schedule like 15 or 20 minutes for your alone time, or do you just kind of take it as it's available and as it comes? I wonder what that looks like for you.
I used to go both ways, or I used to
Mm-hmm.
have to hard schedule it, but I
Mm-hmm.
find it's a muscle. Maybe it's not a muscle, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you get where it gets easier as time progresses. And now I'm
Mm-hmm.
finding I don't necessarily need to schedule it. I'm able to just take it as it comes.
Yeah.
When things get really hectic for me, when I know this is going to be a hard week, then I
Mm-hmm.
always have to schedule it. may not
Hmm.
necessarily use it, but hey, I got the time. I have the time set away for it. Um,
Right.
that's good too. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I find it is a muscle. It's like the process of grounding. If you're doing it meditatively, the first few times it may seem much more hard to get through it. Okay, you're just trying to figure out, and it's like anything else. The more you do it, the
Hmm.
easier it gets. It's like eventually you learn,
Right.
okay, I can get into this state easier now. But if you're just starting out, it's going to take you a long time to get that heart
Yeah.
rate down, get that
Right.
executive center in your brain working again. Sometimes that can be a battle in and of itself.
Right, right. And one book that I always recommend, now it's not maybe necessarily for everybody. It is more of a spiritual book as opposed to a religious book. So if you're not really into spirituality, like Buddhism and things like that, it might not be a good fit for you, but I recommend. It's called Personal Power Through Awareness, and it talks about energy, and it talks about grounding, and it talks about understanding what's yours and understanding what's not, and how to kind of deal with that. And it's a really great book. It helped me a whole lot. Again, it's not going to be for everybody. So if it's not for you, I'm sure there's some really amazing books out there that you would love. But it's by Sonia Roman, and it's available on Amazon. And there is no promotion or anything like that. Like, I don't get a kickback from it. It is just a really good book that helped me a lot to be able to sit in solitude.
Mm.
Um, so it was very, very helpful for me personally. And so whenever I have something that's worked for me, I always like to recommend it. Maybe it's your vibe, maybe it's not. So yeah, well, we're at about 52 minutes. I did want to do a little box breathing and a little meditation. So I think what we'll do, Ben, what are some final thoughts on this for everybody before we get into that, in case people kind of want to drop off? What do you want to leave everybody with?
Just know that you're worth taking time for yourself. Um, and yeah, you can continue on with not doing it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, if you want to just go throughout your day and not
Mm-hmm.
have all that stuff piling up on you, not want all those automatic negative thoughts just harassing you and
Right,
dampening those down. Why wouldn't you?
right.
Journaling is part of it. Taking that time for yourself, writing down, this is what's on my mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just that simple act alone can help you tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're worth it. Like that, what isn't it a hair dye thing? We're worth it. You're worth it. And somebody said something about my necklace. Thank you. One of my dearest friends got this for me in Palm Springs, California, and I love it. It's just amazing. So for those of you, I am meditations and things like that are something I'm going to put up on the channel. So I'm going to give you a little introduction into what my meditations kind of look like. So we're going to do one of those. So if you want to stick around for it, stick around. It's only going to be about 5 minutes. If it's not your vibe, thank you so much for showing up. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Um, don't forget, Needing a Meeting goes live today at 3:40. The vote is this evening. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. on my channel, Carol is going to be interviewing me. So it'll be a chance for you to learn a little bit about me. And if astrology is your thing, we are going to premiere our first ever pre-recorded video this evening at 8 p.m. Central. And Karina and I will be in the chat. We'll be talking about Gemini season and all that means. So if that's your vibe, hop on. If not, then we've got some great topics coming up about codependency, healthy versus unhealthy relationships, and some really, really great topics that'll be good for the boat crew out there who likes that. So, all right, whew, let's go ahead. For those of you who have been on Meeting to Meeting, you know what this is going to look like. Go ahead, and I want you to just take a deep breath, kind of let your shoulders drop, and close your eyes. And I want you to drop into your heart, okay? Whether that's putting your hands on your heart or imagining a little version of yourself going into your heart center. And we're going to do some box breathing. So what we're going to do this 3 times. We're going to breathe in through our nose for a count of 4. We're going to hold for a count of 4. And we're going to exhale until all of the air is out of our lungs and our shoulders drop. If you have a mantra or a positive thought you would like to say to yourself, say that on the in breath. And if you have anything you want to release, think of that on the out breath. So go ahead and we're going to breathe in, hold, and exhale. Again, breathe in, hold, and exhale. Last one, breathe in, hold, and exhale. I want you to imagine that you are in a beautiful field surrounded by mountains and flowers and the grass blowing in the breeze. I want you to take a moment as you stand in your bare feet on the grass to look around and notice the birds flying in the air, feeling the wind on your face, and taking a moment to just be thankful for this moment of solitude. As you open your eyes from the solitude, you see someone that you love very much coming over to you. This could be a person that is still here on this earthly plane or someone who has crossed over and they're smiling and excited to see you. And they come over and they give you a great big hug and they smile at you. And I want you to imagine some words of encouragement that this person would give to you. And take a moment to hear this person saying that to you right now to encourage you. And after their beautiful words of encouragement, you give them a great big hug. And they walk off into the distance. And you look around and you see each and every one of us and all of your friends and loved ones off in the distance. And we're waving to you to come join us. And you run over to us. And we welcome you with open arms and smiles. And I want you to take a moment to send out love to everybody that's in your group. And then take a moment to receive that love for yourself. And when your heart feels full and you feel you are ready, take a deep breath and go ahead and open your eyes when you're ready. All right. I hope that you guys feel a little more grounded and a little lighter. Thank you, Ben, for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, everybody who showed up. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Ben, stick around. Stasia is going to take us out, and we'll see you guys on the next one.